Hello guys, this is your friend Fanfickage 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Banished Naruto built a crimson empire and harem with Anko, Ino and Koyuki part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A groan sounded from under the bundle of covers as a slender arm snaked out from under them and began to rummage around on the dresser to stop the tortuous sound coming from the young woman's alarm clock, signaling the start of another day. However, today was going to be different from all the others. Today was the day that young Ino Yamanaka could finally stop acting. A day she had been waiting for the past 4 years. Finally finding the button to silence the torture device, the blonde teen threw off her blankets, exposing her form. A lingering smell of wafting up into the air from the previous night's activities. Throwing her legs over the edge of her bed, she stood up and stretched out her sore muscles, ignoring her state of undress as she went through her cycle of light stretches to loosen up her sore muscles, especially the ones in her crotch area. A faint smile on her face as she remembered the events from last night. Glad we put those silencing seals up, otherwise, pretty sure my father would have broken down the door with all the noise I was making last night. She mused, giggling lightly to herself. Her and her fellow blonde had gone for multiple rounds in the sack the previous night, right under her parents' noses. Done with her stretching, Ino quickly made her way to the bathroom that was connected to her room. When she had begun to show signs of puberty, Inoichi had insisted on his daughter having her own bathroom and had spared no expense to have the bathroom added to her bedroom. Sure, it took away some of her closet space, but she felt it was a fair trade, since having her own bathroom gave her a sense of privacy. Turning on the water, she adjusted the temperature to her liking before stepping in, allowing the warm water to cascade over her body, further relieving the tension in her muscles that her stretching had missed. Letting out a soft groan as the warm water worked its magic. As the water fell over her, Ino thought back to last night's other noteworthy event, while she washed up. Mizuki, her former academy instructor, had attempted to steal the scroll of seals last night and had even attempted to frame Naruto for the crime. Going as far as to henge into the young blonde man, though the silver-haired Chunin had not expected that both the young man he had intended to frame and Ino would be waiting for him. Nor did he see the ninja wire stretched out in his path until it severed his head from his body, not even knowing who had killed him. While Naruto had grabbed the scroll, Ino had quickly set to work, altering the dead mon's memories so that when her father inevitably checked the fool's last memories, he would see Orochimaru killing Mizuki. Smirking at the flawless theft of the sacred scroll of seals, Ino shut off the water and stepped out of the shower. Setting to work drying herself off before she slipped on a comfortable pair of panties with a matching bra. Moving to her bed, she knelt down and pulled out a long suitcase of some kind, before dropping it on her bed and opening it. Once opened, she gazed at the container's contents. A majority of the storage space was taken up by a black and purple armor-like outfit. Chakra armor to be exact. Without hesitation, she slipped into the outfit. Before long, she had finished changing into the chakra armor. A special gift given to her by her lover to ensure her safety and well-being. A sleek black and purple outfit, with disconnected sleeves that showed off her shoulders and upper arms. The outfit itself hugged her curves perfectly, allowing them to be more pronounced than usual. A belt full of storage pouches for an assortment of gear and other necessities. Her forearms were covered with elbow-length gloves, with arm guards protecting the back of her hand and forearms. Engraved in them are intricate carvings and seals. Once fully dressed in her new outfit, she reached in case and brought out one last object. A single necklace with a sun-like design painted a crimson-red color. Smiling, she placed the necklace around her neck before closing the case and stowing it under her bed once more. Doing a final check on her chakra armor, she channeled her chakra into her armor, activating it. Satisfied, the blonde kunoichi dropped the seals placed around her room and left. "Morning, Daddy. Going somewhere?" Ino asked as she entered the kitchen, seeing her father about to head out the door. Yes, Hokage-sama has summoned me to check something out, shouldn't take long. He replied before he turned to bid his little princess goodbye, freezing up as he saw the outfit she was wearing now. Princess, what are you wearing? Oh, this. The blonde girl asked innocently. This was a gift. You didn't think I was going to start my career as a kunoichi in my usual academy cloths, did you? Oh, a gift from a certain boy, perhaps. Her mother inquired with a mischievous tone in her voice. She knew her mother was implying the boy she had pretended to be a fangirl for the past 4 years. Their mere thought of her being involved with the supposedly last, loyal, Uchiha made her stomach lurch. Sure, while the raven-haired teen was attractive and definitely skilled, he had already displayed the red flags of being mentally unstable. It didn't help that Sasuke had refused any and all counseling from her father to help him cope with the massacre of his clan at his brother's hands. Maybe. Ino replied coyly with a shrug, deciding not to give anything away just yet. Anyways, I need to go, don't wanna be late for team assignments. Grabbing a piece of toast, she kissed her parents on the cheeks and disappeared out the door before they could ask any more questions. The main one being who in particular gifted such an expensive set of armor to her. While her mother was quick to jump to conclusions, her father would dig for a solid explanation until he was satisfied. That armor looked very expensive. Inoichi noted out loud, unaware of its exact origins. Which didn't sit well with the overprotective father. Oh, leave it be, dear. His wife commented with a giggle. You know there is only one boy her age that could afford something like that. Inoichi merely frowned at his wife's words. Sasuke may have the money to spend on such a gift, but the lone Uchiha did not have the kindness within him to do such an act. No, this gift came from an unknown entity. Anyways, I best not keep Hokage-sama waiting. Inoichi commented before disappearing out the door, pushing the thoughts and questions about his daughter's mysterious benefactor into the back of his mind to inquire about later. Academy. Ino couldn't help but smirk as she walked down the hallway leading to her designated classroom. Countless students would gawk at her, not recognizing her at first. Though while the blonde was amused, she paid them little mind. There was only one person she wanted to see right now. One Naruto Uzumaki. Rounding the corner, she entered the classroom and stopped with a frown. Her fellow blonde's seat remained empty. Looking for someone, Kiroi Bara. A male voice spoke up from behind her, causing her to smile. Turning around, Ino got her first look at Naruto since last night, but that didn't really count. He was still wearing that god-awful orange jumpsuit he supposedly loved last night. Now though, it was replaced by a similar-looking chakra armor set that she was wearing. Smiling, she jumped up and wrapped her arms around the boy's neck, while at the same time wrapping her legs around his waist, smashing her lips against his in a passion-filled kiss. Much to the shock of the entire class, whom was now stunned into silence as they watched the public display of affection play out. What the hell is this? One Kiba Inuzuka exclaimed, shaking himself from his shock. Hell, if you were going to give up on that prick Sasuke, you could have at least went after a real alpha male, like me. Both blondes merely rolled their eyes at the feral teen's arrogance as they broke their kiss, but ignored him nonetheless, much to his frustration. Paying no mind to the rest of the newly graduated genin, Naruto took his seat and leaned back as Ino proceeded to straddle his waist and lean forward. Laying her head on his shoulder as the blonde teen proceeded to trail his fingers lightly across her back, earning a content sigh from the blonde young woman. So, any word on what teams we are going to be on? Ino asked quietly. Well, the old man approved to have his son reform the Ino Shika-Cho team, so that's where you're going. Naruto replied, earning a groan from his lover, though it only caused Naruto himself to chuckle lightly. You knew it was an extremely likely possibility since the three of you were graduating in the same class. Still doesn't mean I have to like it. Ino pouted. She knew it would be highly unlikely, but she had hoped that her and Naruto would have been placed on the same team together. Think of it this way. The blonde boy smirked. We can conduct business in 2 different locations at once. True. She smiled. Let me guess, you're going to get put on the illustrious Team 7. Correct. Naruto nodded. Our little kitty cat informed me that the team will be made up of myself, Sasuke, and Sakura. With Kakashi Hatake as our sensei. Ha! Beat you this time, Ino pig. A voice screeched out from the doorway, only to realize that no one else was with her like there usually was. Looking across the room, Sakura let out a gasp of surprise as she saw her former friend and rival straddling the lap of the dead last of the class. Congratulations, forehead, you finally won the race only you were competing in. Ino grinned as she raised up from her spot on top of Naruto, much to Sakura's shock. Wah, what is this? Sakura stammered. Why the hell are you all over Naruto, baka? Just because you realize that Sasuke-kun will never look at you doesn't mean you had to jump to the dead last. At this, Ino couldn't help but laugh loudly at the Pinket's proclamation, sitting up into a sitting position while still on the blonde's lap. Yeah, about that forehead. The blonde grinned. I never cared about Uke-chan, my entire fangirl act was exactly that, an act. In fact, I absolutely despise the arrogant prick, he is too selfish and probably can't even see past his own nose. Not to mention, I question his utility. I mean, all these girls throwing themselves at him but he stays fixated on one man. In his seat, said Sasuke Uchiha was seething in anger at the blonde girl's words. While he didn't care one bit for the pathetic fangirl, and what she did with the doby, she still had no right to look down upon him. But why Naruto, baka? The Pinket asked, clearly confused as to why her now formal rival had chosen the blonde teenage boy. Maybe I know something about Naruto-kun that you don't. Ino replied with a grin, and a mischievous glint in her eyes. And just what would that be? Sakura challenged. Oh, about 10 inches. Came the blonde's blunt reply as Ino laid her head back down on her lover's shoulder. Hearing the Yamanaka heiress's very blunt reply, many of the girls still present in the classroom gained atomic blushes on their faces as their imagination took a perverted detour, most of which surrounding a certain blonde-haired Jinchuriki. After a few seconds, a solid thump could be heard as one Hinata Hyuga had fainted. A small trail of blood leaking from her nose as she sported a slightly goofy smile on her face. Meanwhile, many of the boys in the classroom were feeling rather inadequate due to the blonde girl's statement. In somewhat of a daze, Sakura silently takes her seat. For the first time, not caring if she was seated next to Sasuke or not. Her face still flushed from the remarks Ino had made. Stealing a glance at the two blondes, she couldn't help but feel a sense of envy. Though the feeling didn't last long as her fangirl mentality returned with a vengeance. That baka did something to her, I know it. She mentally exclaimed, coming up with various ways the blonde boy could be manipulating her friend and rival. Don't worry, Ino pig, I'll find out what that baka did and make him pay. Minutes ticked by before their classroom instructor made his appearance, a young man with dark brown hair, almost black actually, tied up into a high ponytail. A scar traveling horizontally across his face, just under his eyes. However, he seemed distracted, otherwise he would have noticed just how silent the classroom already was. All right, class, quiet down. He looked up, now noticing the scene in front of him. Miss Yamanaka, could you please take your assigned seat? But I'm comfortable here, the blonde girl whined, earning a chuckle from her blonde lover. She's fine where she is, Iruka-sensei. Naruto commented. Just let us know what our team assignments are. Iruka couldn't help but frown, but merely shook his head. Technically they were no longer students, so he merely sighed and brought up his clipboard, prepared to read off the teams that had been selected by the Shinobi Council and the Hokage. Iruka-sensei, where is Mizuki-sensei? One of the students inquired, noticing the lack of the Mon's partner. Well, they were going to learn about it sooner or later. Iruka thought to himself, before replying. Mizuki was found dead last night. Evidence suggests that he intended to betray the village. Upon hearing this, many within the classroom gasped in surprise, while Naruto and Ino exchanged a knowing look, each smirking. Now, I am going to call out the teams, and each team's sensei. So pay attention, the scared Chunin stated, eager to get this moving forward. Team 1 will consist of. A few minutes later, Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Iruka read off, ignoring the loud cheering from the Pinkett. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Looks like the kitty cat was right. Ino commented in a low voice, drowning out Iruka's voice as he continued to list the reaming teams. Did you ever doubt it? Naruto replied with a grin. Hey, can't blame a girl for wanting to be on the same team as her boyfriend, can you? Sadly, we don't have that influence in this village yet. Naruto commented, keeping his voice low so that only Ino could hear him. Otherwise, I would have us on the same team, with Snake as our sensei. We'll get there, just gotta be patient. Just like your mother taught us. MMHM. Time continued to tick by, as one by one, each assigned team was called away by their respective senseis. Until only the members of Team 7, Team 8, and Team 10 remained. Though it wasn't missed by those who were observant that the Hyuga heiress was glaring daggers at the blonde whom was still in Naruto's lap, while Kiba could only look on in envy. Silently grumbling to himself that she was wasting her time with a dobe like Naruto, and would do better with an alpha, like him. Team 8 with me. A feminine voice called from the doorway, prompting the class minus Shikamaru who was asleep on his desk, to look at the owner of the voice. A fair-skinned woman with a slender build stood at the doorway. Her long black hair looking untamed as he reached down to her upper back, which only served to make her crimson eyes stand all the more, giving her a truly exotic beauty. Her outfit consisting of a red and white mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve visible, while her left arm was exposed. Her hands and upper thighs wrapped in a series of bandages. Around her neck, hung a lone silver necklace, with a crimson sun design as its pendant. Coming up behind her was a tall man with brown eyes, olive skin with short black spiky hair and a beard. A cigarette hanging from his lips, much to the raven-haired beauty's annoyance as she waved her hand in front of her face to ward off the smoke. Must you do that inside, Asuma? She complained with a clipped tone, earning an uncaring shrug from the man. Team 10 with me. Asuma spoke, narrowing his eyes at the position Ino was in, whom was now reluctantly getting up from her comfortable position. Meet up at the usual spot? She asked. Yup, I'll meet you there in a few hours. Naruto replied. Smiling, Ino leaned down and gave him one last deep kiss before getting up and following her team out the door. It wasn't missed by Naruto that the smoking man was glaring at him, no doubt due to the Jinchuriki's closeness to the blonde girl, not that he cared. Naruto knew the bearded man lusted after women, since Asuma made frequent visits to multiple brothels throughout High no Kuni. It was also no secret to the blonde that the man was hardly faithful to his supposedly secret girlfriend, Kurenai. Though unknown to the womanizer, the Genjutsu mistress was well aware of his infidelity. He also knew that his precious yellow rose could look after herself, should the womanizer attempt anything. Speaking of which, Naruto turned his attention to Kurenai. He gave the woman a wink, causing her to blush lightly before following her own team out of the classroom, leaving behind the 3 members of Team 7 to await their sensei. While Naruto settled into his seat and relaxed, knowing he still had a few hours to wait. Sakura on the other hand wanted answers. Oi, Naruto baka, she called out, making her way over to his desk. What the hell did you do to Ino pig? You would actually sound more concerned if you used her actual name. Naruto pointed out, making her scowl further. And what makes you think I did anything to my beautiful yellow rose? For her part, Sakura was a little taken back by the blonde's nickname for Ino, finding it a bit cute. Well, clearly you had to do something to her to get her to act that way around you. Sakura accused, shaking off her recent thoughts. I've known her for years, and there is no way she would choose you over someone like Sasuke-kun. At this, Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the Pinket's ignorance. Really? Then what's her favorite color? Naruto inquired. Purple. She wears it all the time. Sakura grinned, thinking she was correct, only for Naruto to shake his head. No, her favorite color is yellow, hence the nickname I gave her, Kiroibara, Yellow Rose. He corrected. She wears mostly purple because it's easier for her to accessorize with, since almost everything goes with purple. Now, how about her favorite food? He continued. She's dieting, so she doesn't have a favorite food. Too bad she isn't dieting. If anything, she actually has a healthy appetite. The blonde replied, earning another scowl from the Pinket. And her favorite is ebi fry, udon noodles, with a side of onigiri. Though she does have a love of pocky. Sakura remained silent, wondering if she truly didn't know her former best friend as well as she thought she did. She couldn't help but feel a tad bit guilty that she had ignored her former best friend for so long that she literally was a stranger to her. Face it, Haruno-san, Naruto commented, making the Pinket slightly flinch at the formal use of her name, rather the usual, Sakura-chan, she had grown accustomed to him using. Everything you know is a lie. With Team 10, Asuma could only sigh as he looked over his team that sat spread out before him. Shikamaru had immediately laid down under the tree. Above him was Ino, relaxing on the tree branch while munching happily on a pocky stick, earning a slightly envious look from Choji. The large-boned Akamichi had taken a spot just off to the side of his best friend. As it was, Asuma, Shikamaru, and Choji had already gone through their typical introductions. Likes, dislikes, hobbies, and such. Now, the trio of males awaited the lone female of the group to introduce herself. Now, if this had been the blonde girl they all thought they grew up with, this would have been nothing special. But after the display in the classroom, neither knew what to expect from the freshly graduated Kunoichi. It was as if she woke up a completely different person this morning. Well, as you all know, I am Ino Yamanaka. She began, leaning back against the trunk of the tree above Shikamaru. I like Naruto-kun, flower arrangements, and well, simply enjoying life's little pleasures. I also look forward to greeting each day as a new dawn rises. My dislikes. Ino continued. I absolutely despise that arrogant asshole, Sasuke. But above that, I hate rapists and womanizers, as well as those that choose to remain ignorant about things they don't understand. As for my dreams, right now I am just looking to make a name for myself, and to stand by Naruto-kun's side. Hearing this, the bearded Jonin could only sigh in response. Shikamaru muttered something about troublesome blondes, whilst Choji continued to munch on his potato chips. About that Ino, don't you think you should try and find a better guy to be with? Asuma inquired, offering a friendly smile. I mean, that Naruto kid has a reputation about him. He's not good for you. Is that so? Ino inquired with a knowing smirk. And just who would be good for me, you? Well, I am not suggesting anything. The smoking man tried to play it off, though his body language had told the blonde Kunoichi differently. Though perhaps you could benefit more with someone a bit more experienced than a delinquent boy. Ino merely rolled her eyes, seeing right through what her sensei was attempting to do. Though, she knew very well what kind of a man Asuma was, so she knew to expect this kind of talks with him. She also knew this wouldn't be the last time it would be brought up either. No, I think I am fine with Naruto-kun. The blonde shrugged. After all, he takes very good care of me. Asuma gawked at the young blonde's insinuation. Even Shikamaru and Choji were a bit taken aback by the girl's bluntness, despite already having a front row seat to it earlier in the classroom. Shaking off the shock and jealousy, the bearded Jonin moved on to explain the test they were about to do. Advising that all three of them come at him as if they intended to kill him. Not seeing the sinister smirk the blonde was now sporting. And go, Asuma commanded, prompting Shikamaru and Choji to split off, leaving only Ino remaining. You know you're supposed to hide, right Ino? Ah, and here I thought you wanted some alone time with me. She taunted, before channeling chakra into her arm guards, causing two sai to appear in her hands. Gripping the weapons at their center, where the three prongs met between her fingers. Ready or not, here I come. Team 7, a few hours later. 3 hours had passed since the trio were left alone in the classroom, and two of the aspiring genin were becoming increasingly agitated, while the third was lightly snoozing in his chair. Still a little worn out from his previous night's actions with Ino. Where the hell is he? Sakura finally exclaimed, her frustration reaching its boiling point at her sensei's tardiness. Unfortunately for a certain blonde, her frustration had shaken him awake, causing him to groan in protest of being robbed of even more sleep. Though this time, in a less than pleasant way. Damn, Naruto groaned as he stood up and stretched. Dobi, what's with the new look? The Uchiha grunted, taking note of Naruto's new change of attire. Gone was his trademark orange tracksuit. Instead, it was replaced by a nearly skin-tight jumpsuit made from an extremely durable-looking material that at the same time was surprisingly flexible, that was primarily black with burnt orange trimmings. Various minor padding and straps along the sides, offering even more protection and other utility uses. A pouch on either leg to hold his shuriken and kunai. Arm and shin guards offered more protection for their proper areas, while fingerless gloves adorned his hands. A pair of GKoyuk boots finishing off his new look. This? The blonde inquired, gesturing at his outfit. Just something I had stored away for the right moment. Before the Uchiha could press the issue, the door slid open, revealing a silver-haired man wearing a face mask, while his forehead protector covered one of his eyes. Kakashi Hatake. Naruto mused to himself mentally. Last surviving student of my father, son of the infamous White Fang, and also killed Rin Nohara, not to mention, he also blames himself for the death of his other teammate, Obito Uchiha. This man carries a lot of guilt, wonder how that will affect him. Team 7, Kakashi nonchalantly inquired. Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. Not waiting for a reply, the silver-haired Jonin disappeared via a shunshin in a swirl of leaves. Both Sakura and Sasuke immediately moved to leave the classroom, though when Sakura turned to yell at the blonde to hurry up, she only found that Naruto was already gone. Frowning, the Pinkett quickly followed after her raven-haired crush to the roof of the academy. It didn't take long for the two to arrive on the rooftop, surprised to see Naruto leaning against the railing in a bored manner, whilst their Jonin-sensei had his nose buried in his orange book, completely ignoring the blonde genin before him. What the hell, Naruto baka? Sakura exclaimed. How did you get up here before us? Naruto, however, offered no answer, merely smirking as he awaited the first team meeting to get underway. Well now that everyone is here, let's begin. Kakashi stated, closing his book. Let's start with introductions. What do you mean, introductions? Sakura inquired. At this, both Kakashi and Naruto looked at her as if she had a second head growing out of her shoulder. Well, I suppose I can start off and show you how it's done, since it's clear you don't know how to introduce yourself. The silver-haired Jonin commented in a sarcastic tone. My name is Kakashi Hatake. The Jonin began. I have lots of likes and dislikes. I have many hobbies, and as for my dreams, well, never thought about it. In other words, mind your business. Naruto chuckled to himself. You're up next, Pinky. Alright, my name is Sakura Haruno, my likes are. She steals a glance at Sasuke and giggles to herself. My hobbies are. Looks again at Sasuke, and giggles even more. And my dream is too. A blush spreads across her face as she squeals to herself, prompting the object of her affection to slowly slide away from her. And your dislikes? Kakashi inquired with a sweat drop. I hate Naruto baka, she exclaimed. Sit on it and rotate, cunt. The blonde replied while casually flipping her off, causing her to immediately shut up, too shocked to react to his obscene gesture. Anyways, moving on. The masked Jonin instructed, frowning behind his mask. The dossier he was given on his students claimed that Naruto had a massive crush on the pink-haired girl, yet his actions and words completely contradicted that. How about you, Sasuke? My name is Sasuke Uchiha. The raven-haired boy stated. There are plenty of things I hate, but I don't see that it matters, considering there is almost nothing I do like. It seems pointless to talk about dreams, but I do have one goal. Restore my clan and kill a certain man. Sakura looked at the raven-haired teen with stars in her eyes, whilst Naruto had an uncaring look across his face. Your turn, future Hokage. Yeah, about that. I don't want to be the next Hokage, never did. Naruto shrugged. Too much paperwork, and despite supposedly being the strongest in the village, no one respects you. Anyways, Naruto Uzumaki, at your service. Anyways, my likes are pretty straightforward. First and foremost, I love my precious yellow rose. After that, in no particular order, I like Ikiruka's ramen, enjoying life's little pleasures, and greeting each day as a new dawn rises. Each of the members of Team 7 quirked an eyebrow at the blonde's last statement, as it sounded too specific. What I hate are rapists, those that cannot tell the difference between a kunai and the scroll it is sealed inside of, arrogance, and those that choose to keep themselves blind to what's going on around them. My dreams, well, just want to make a name for myself and make my mother proud. Mother. Kakashi narrowed his eyes slightly. As far as he knew, Kushina was dead. Could he know about his parents already? Alright, Kakashi stated as he stood up from his sitting position. I think we all have a better understanding of each other. Meet up tomorrow at Training Ground 7 at 5 a.m. for the real test. Best bring all your shinobi gear, but I advise you not to eat breakfast, unless you want to throw it up. Wait, we already graduated, what do you mean test? Sakura exclaimed in confusion. Hey, did you really think it would be that easy to become genin for the village, Haruno? Naruto smirked. Nah. What we passed was merely to see if we had the potential. Isn't that right, Kakashi-sensei? That is correct, Naruto. The masked Jonin replied after a handful of seconds had passed, thrown off by the blonde's deduction. Alright, see you all tomorrow. Naruto stated as he pushed himself up from the railing. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got a date. Not waiting for a reply, the blonde leapt over the railing and to the shock of his team, landed softly on the ground below, before walking off down the road as if nothing had ever happened. Despite the sheer 40-foot drop to the ground below. Alright, Naruto is now officially a wild card. His dossier is entirely inaccurate. Kakashi thought as he watched the blonde disappear down the road. Hokage's office. Here's inside as he listened to the report given by Inoichi, in regards to Mizuki's murder the previous night when the Chunin had stolen the scroll of seals. It had been as the elder village leader feared. Mizuki had stolen the scroll to give to Orochimaru, only for the snake Sanin to double-cross him and kill him once he received the scroll. This is not good. Hiruzen commented in a somber tone. If Orochimaru has the scroll, there is no telling what he will be capable of. What should we do, Hokage-sama? Inoichi inquired. For now, we maintain the illusion that nothing is wrong. Meanwhile, I am having Anbu patrols scout for additional evidence to give us a clue as to where he is hiding. Very well, Hokage-sama. The blonde man bowed, turning to leave the office only to be met with a bleeding Asuma, who now sported a rather deep cut along his right cheek, as well as multiple other injuries and cuts along his clothing. What the hell happened to you? Inoichi inquired, looking over the state the Jonin was in. My team. The bearded man grunted. Ah, so which one was it? Shikamaru or Choji? The blonde man chuckled. Actually, it was your daughter. Asuma replied, shocking the blonde man. Ino did this to you. Exactly. The bearded Jonin grunted. She is wickedly skillful with those sai of hers, fast and precise, and that armor of hers is almost impenetrable. The hell did you teach her? I didn't teach her anything. Inoichi stated, clearly in shock upon hearing his own daughter, his baby girl, was capable of such things. She was so busy chasing after that Uchiha boy that she didn't want to train. At this, Asuma scoffed. Uchiha. According to her introduction, she absolutely hates that kid. Asuma scoffed. Turns out, she has a thing for the Uzumaki brat, and if what Shikamaru and Choji saw in the classroom was any indication, they've been very close for a long time. Inoichi frowned at this, not liking the fact that his daughter had been keeping secrets from him. Especially when it involved boys. Hokage-sama, if it isn't too much to ask, could you perhaps check on the Uzumaki boy? The blonde inquired, turning to the village leader. I would very much like to know where he is, so that I might have a discussion with him. Against his better judgment, Hiruzen nodded and moved over to a small pedestal that held a single crystal orb. Applying chakra to it, he was surprised when nothing happened. No image, nothing. Frowning, he attempted once more, only for the same result, or rather, lack of results. It appears the orb is no longer functional. The elder man frowned as he stared into the now milky white sphere. Get him! A voice cried out from the mob of people that were in pursuit of a young, 5-year-old boy, whom was running as fast as his small legs could carry him away from the mob of angry people. Why are you doing this? The boy cried out in confusion and panic. The boy's answer came in the form of a rock sailing through the air and connecting with the back of his head, causing the poor blonde to stumble and lose his balance as he fell head over heels as he tumbled along the cobblestone street. Scrambling as quickly as his small body would allow him to, the young blonde scurried to get away from his pursuers. However, it was not to be. His stumble had given the mob all the time they needed to catch up with their target, as one had gotten ahead of the young boy and delivered a devastating kick to the child's stomach, causing him to cough up a glob of saliva with some blood mixed in with it. Shortly after the initial blow, the rest of the mob begun to join in. Hammering blows down upon the child, whom was now balled up in a fetal position, desperately trying to shield himself as best he could from the onslaught of blows that had begun to rain down upon him. As futile as it was. This is for my brother, you demon scum. One of the mob members proclaimed, as he delivered another kick to the boy's stomach, ignoring the child's pleas to stop. Damn fox brat. A woman cried out. My husband died because of you. As the minutes ticked by, the angry mob had grown bored with the use of just their punches and kicks, and had begun to bring in other weapons to continue their assault. Boards, stones, and metal pipes. One of the mob members had even gained access to a kunai that had been discarded carelessly by a shinobi. By now, the child was beginning to slip into unconsciousness, as his own blood pooled around him and stained the cobblestone crimson. His limp body rocking back and forth as more blows landed down upon him. His cries having ceased some time ago. Time to end this once and for all, demon. And avenge our loved ones, and our beloved Yondaime that you stole from us. One man stated, earning shouts of approval from the crowd as he brandished the kunai he had in his hand. Stalking towards the boy as the mob parted to give him easy access to the mon's defenseless victim. However, before the man could get any closer to the boy, a mysterious package-like item sailed through the air before a loud bang echoed throughout the streets, causing the package-like item to explode right in front of the mon's face, knocking him and several others back. Those that remained standing turned to see a slender woman with silver-white hair, and crimson-red eyes, wearing a black cowboy hat, accompanied with a black vest and a white, long-sleeved undershirt with the sleeves rolled up, exposing a rose tattoo on her left forearm. In her hands was an odd-looking stick-like weapon, which she was pointing directly at them. Get in there, Bob. The newcomer called out, prompting an impressively large man, in what appeared to be in samurai armor, to leap over the woman and charge into the crowd. Tossing any unfortunate enough to be in his path, aside. Clearing a path for the silver-haired beauty to approach the boy. Damn, did you do a number on the poor darlin'? The woman spoke as she knelt down to check over the barely conscious boy. His blue eyes looking up her, pleading. It's what the demon child deserves for killing our loved ones. One of the men stated, as he got back to his feet. Glaring at the woman and her companion. others mumbling their agreement. TCH. The silver-haired woman scoffed. And here, I thought those two junkers were idiots. You lot though, you take the cake. Whatever, you're just another demon-loving whore, just like that little blonde-haired bitch this thing is always hanging around with. And that ramen chef's whore of a daughter. The man spat out, causing the crimson-eyed woman to narrow her eyes in disgust at the man. Maybe after we've gotten rid of that abomination for good, and teach you a lesson for interfering, we'll go re-educate those two bitches. Blonde one is still a little young, but hell, I'm sure she'll learn soon enough. Hearing this, a shadow fell over the woman's eyes. Lifting her left hand, she simply snapped her fingers without saying a word. Upon hearing the woman snap her fingers, the large armored man turned his attention towards the fool that had been spouting his nonsense and disgusting threats. With a swift movement that betrayed the large man's size, Bob had caught the man by his head and began to squeeze it, causing the man to cry out in pain, as the sounds of cracking could be heard, before finally, the man let out a scream of pain before it was immediately silenced. The rest of the bystanders could only stand by in horror, as they witnessed the man's head being crushed in the lone hand of Bob. All right, Bob, time to take out the trash. The woman grinned. As the large man began to tear through the remaining mob members, the silver-haired woman secured her odd-looking weapon to her back and scooped up the injured boy into her arms and lifted him up. As she peered once more into the boy's blue eyes, she could see a swirl of emotions going on behind them. Fear and confusion being the chief among them, but also trace amounts of hope. But the one that stuck out the crimson-eyed woman's attention was the look of loneliness. Ka-san. The boy muttered weakly, causing the woman to smile sadly. Yeah, I'll be your Ka-san. She replied with a soft smile as she gazed down at the young boy. Looking up, she could see that her companion had finished tearing into what was left of the mob that had ganged up on the boy. Most now lay in a bloody heap, due to the large man's handiwork, while the others had scattered in fear. Come on, Bob, we're leaving, she said as she stood up straight. Hospital. The large man spoke slowly. Don't think so. The woman sighed as she began to walk away from the scene. If the way these fools reacted to the child is any indication, I doubt he would get the help he needs there. We'll have Angela tend to him back at camp. Family. Miss Boy. Doubt it. He has the same eyes I had as a little girl. I reckon he doesn't have much of anyone to look out for him. She replied sadly. At this, Bob grunted in understanding. Having been with the woman for so long, he was privy to such personal information regarding his boss. Namely, how her parents would neglect her in pursuit of their own careers, leaving her to her own devices throughout her entire childhood. One of the main reasons the woman had pursued her current career. Stop! A small voice cried out from behind the duo, prompting both to turn and look. Seeing a small, blonde-haired girl no older than the boy in the woman's hands. I won't let you take him. I won't let you hurt him. And who are you? The woman asked, as the little girl panted in front of them. Clearly she had been running for some time, no doubt looking for the boy in her arms. I'm Ino Yamanaka, Naruto-kun's future wife. The blonde proudly proclaimed as she crossed her arms over her chest and stomped her foot. Now who are you and what are you doing with my future husband? Well, aren't you a little spitfire? The silver-haired woman chuckled. Name's Elizabeth Caledonia. Calamity, Ash, but you can just call me Ash for short. Everyone else does. That's a long name, the young girl stated. As to what I am doing with your little friend her, well, I'll be honest with ya, I plan on taking him with me and raise him as my own. Ash continued, earning a look of shock from the little girl. No, you can't, the girl exclaimed in a panic. If you take him, he'll never achieve his dream of becoming Hokage, and I'll be left all alone. I understand how you feel, little firecracker. The silver-haired woman said in a comforting tone. But you should know we just stopped a mob of idiots trying to kill your friend here. Evening threatening to do horrible things to you and another girl, daughter of a ramen chef in these parts. Ayame-chan. Ino exclaimed, a look of horror written across her face, as she was now worried about her other friend. We took care of those fools, so you need not worry about that. Ash reassured the girl. However, I reckon they are not the only ones in this village that think the same way. Thinking it would be best if I took the boy and raised him away from here. But, Ino began, tears forming in her small eyes at the prospect of losing her best friend. It's okay, Ino-chan. Naruto replied weakly, as Ash adjusted him in her arms so that he could look to his fellow blonde. I'll come back. You promise? I promise. He smiled. Tell you what, Spitfire. Ash commented, using her nickname for the little girl. I'll make sure you future hubby here writes you frequently. It will be up to you though, to make sure his other girlfriend knows he is safe. This earned a small blush from both blondes, not only at the insinuation of the boy being the young blonde's future husband, but also at the prospect of the slightly older Ayame being seen more than just a friend for the two of them. Pinky promise, Ino demanded, holding out her right hand with her pinky finger extended. Chuckling at the girl, Ash mirrored the action, wrapping her pinky finger around the girl's small finger. Finger cut off, 10,000 fist punchings, whoever lies has to swallow 1,000 needles. Ash finished the yubikiri. You better keep your promise. Ino narrowed her eyes defiantly at the woman before her. Or I will cut off your finger. You know, I like you firecracker. The silver-haired woman laughed. You may just make the perfect wife for the boy. At any rate, we should clear out of here before anyone else arrives. With a reluctant nod, Ino approached the woman and cupped Naruto's cheeks before leaning in and giving him a kiss on the lips. All the while blushing up a storm, before she turned and ran off. Completely embarrassed by her actions, though she didn't regret it in the slightest, which had only earned a chuckle from Ash. Come on, let's clear out. The silver-haired woman stated, as the trio disappeared into the night. Naruto groaned as he slowly woke up. Bringing his right hand up to rub his eyes, shaking away the dream memory he had just experienced. His inner musing was cut short as a pair of slender arms wrapped around his torso, and pulled him closer to a feminine figure behind him. Bad dream? Ino inquired, as she placed a kiss on the blonde's shoulder, coaxing her blonde lover to lean back into her embrace. Naruto chuckled a little, as he positioned himself on his back, allowing Ino to lay her head on his chest. Her hand tracing along the tattoo he had on his right pectoral. An image of a nine-tailed fox sinking its claws into a crimson-colored sun. A clear reference to the massive criminal empire his mother had left to him before she returned west. Nah, just some old wounds that got reopened due to my talk with the old man yesterday. The blonde Jinchuriki replied, using his left hand to trace along the blonde woman's back tattoo. A skeletal dragon design, with the spine of the dragon running up along her own, stopping just at the base of her neck with the wings extending outwards, touching her shoulders before cascading down her back. Almost the exact same as the tattoo he had on his own back, with the exception of hers being more slender to fit her feminine body. I guess we would be the talk of the town after our sudden change yesterday. Ino giggled, remembering the reaction of their classmates from the previous day. Not to mention her own teams. So, what did you tell him? What we rehearsed. We hid our relationship for your safety, and even played a little guilt trip on the old man about how the idiots would react if the so-called demon showed any signs of becoming stronger. Came his reply, before he turned his attention to her. So, how did you parents take the news of you moving out? Well, my mother threw a fit. I can only imagine what she is going to do when she learns that I am with you, instead of that arrogant asshole. Ino giggled as it was no secret that her mother absolutely despised her blonde lover and had been one of the girl's main antagonizers growing up over the years, constantly pushing her towards the Uchiha boy. Daddy, however, was still busy with the Hokage at the time, so knowing him, expect him to show up soon to, formally, meet you. Oh, I am so looking forward to you formally introducing me to your overprotective father. The Jinchuriki grinned in a teasing manner. Maybe I should regale him with tales of our escapades under his own roof. I am sure Daddy would love hearing how you made his sweet, little innocent princess scream out your name for hours on end. Ino purred as she positioned herself into a straddling position over his waist. Leaning down, she captured his lips with her own. Speaking of which, she whispered huskily into his ear. We have a few hours to kill before we need to meet our teams. You little minx. Naruto grinned, knowing full well what the blonde on top of him was looking to do. Are you sure 2 hours will be enough to sat your desires, my little yellow rose? She moaned as she felt his hands caress her body. Only one way to find out. As the two lovers basked in each other's presence, Naruto peered over at the alarm clock located on the nightstand next to their bed and let out a soft chuckle, catching Ino's attention as she perked her head up from his chest that she had been laying upon. And what do you find funny? She inquired in a teasing tone. Just barely made it, the blonde Jinchuriki responded, nodding towards the clock, showing that it was just 10 minutes before they usually woke up to train and get ready for the day's events. Shower. The blonde young woman agreed, with a hint of mischief in her eyes. Sometime later. So, sated now, Naruto teased, as he joined the blonde mind walker at the breakfast table, fully dressed in his chakra armor and gear, carrying a hot plate of bacon, eggs, and hash browns. A Western-style breakfast, but it was something he came to love while traveling around with his mother. Ino, on the other hand, blushed slightly at the blonde mont's comment, since she had instigated another romp in the shower just moments ago. I suppose for now, Ino replied, taking a bite out of her breakfast. So, what are the plans for today? Well, aside from our team meetings and glorified chore missions. Naruto snorted, with Ino mirroring his reaction. But aside from that, I need to stop by and talk with the property owner of that plot of land over in the red light district. Casino. Nah. Thinking more nightclub. The blonde shrugged dismissively. If we are going to be operating out of this village, we'll need some place we can blow off steam. We got a name for it yet? Ino inquired. Thinking about the Black Lotus. Naruto answered. Well, certainly beats all the leaf-named businesses here. The blonde mind walker shrugged. She had literally lost count of how many business within Konoha had something with leaf in the title. Probably the only exceptions were the handful of businesses they were sponsoring. Anyways, suppose we should head out. The blonde Jinchuriki sighed, really not looking forward to spending the next 6 to 8 hours with his team. Still not getting along with your team, Naruto-kun? Barely. He sighed. Sasuke as well, doubt I need to go into detail about his problems. Sakura is still convinced I did something horrible to you to make you be with me. Though I guess the bright side of that is that now she is too focused on trying to expose my evil ways, she hasn't been hanging all over the Uchiha like she normally would. Ino couldn't help but giggle at the thought of her former rival suddenly stalking her blonde lover everywhere he went. Though, as per usual, her imagination took a more perverted detour, as she imagined the Pinkett spying on the two of them while they were making love. And some, even more bolder fantasies. As for Hitaki, Naruto continued, breaking Ino out of her musing. The man is saddled with way too much guilt to be a sensei for a team of fresh genin. It's clear he favors Sasuke, probably because of his bond with his teammate Obito. With me, he is conflicted. It seems he wants to honor my father, but at the same time, he blames me for his death. And lastly, as well as sadly, he doesn't seem to care about Sakura in the slightest. At any rate, I am probably going to have to step in and make sure she at least gets some of the training she needs. Maybe see if Anko-chan can whip her into shape. He mused out loud. We'll talk to her later. For now, we have our teams to get to. Ino stated as she got up from the table, Naruto following suit. Quickly washing their dishes, the two double-checked their gear before heading out the door, locking it behind them. Though, they were surprised to see someone was waiting for them just outside the property gate. A clear look of frustration and maybe a tad of disapproval. Especially when the man saw his daughter walking out of the home with a noticeable limp and a certain glow about her, causing him to scowl slightly. Uzumaki-san. Inoichi greeted stiffly. Ah, Inoichi dono, what a pleasant surprise. Naruto greeted back with a smile as Ino took hold of his arm in a loving manner. What brings you here so early? Aside from the fact that my daughter suddenly moved out of the home yesterday afternoon without so much of a word to live with a boy, that I find out, she has been dating in secret for some time. The man replied, his tone clipped, showing that he was clearly upset with the current events. I see. The blonde Jinchuriki pursed his lips together. Unfortunately, now is not the best time to discuss. How about dinner tonight at our place? Inoichi seemed to think this over for a moment before agreeing, knowing full well that the two had their own teams to get to. They were still shinobi of the village after all, so family affairs could wait until the evening hours. That is agreeable, I shall be by later this evening. The elder blonde man stated before bidding the two farewell. Guess I should make plans on what to make for dinner tonight. Naruto stated. You leave that to me, Naruto-kun. Ino answered. I'll see you this evening. The two shared one last kiss before parting their separate ways. Training Ground 7. You're late. Sakura exclaimed in a frustrated tone as the blonde Jinchuriki casually strolled onto the training grounds, absent-mindedly reading over a scroll, nearly 3 hours after the meeting time. And you never learn. The blonde quipped as he rolled up the scroll he had been reading over and stored it into one of his many storage seals upon his outfit. Kakashi-sensei is consecutively 3 hours late for everything that is not AC rank or higher. Hell, there is even a betting pool going around among the Anbu members on if he would be late to his own funeral. And how would you know that information, Naruto? A voice spoke from behind the blonde, causing both Sakura and Sasuke to jump in surprise at the sudden appearance of their sensei. However, the blonde in question merely turned an eyebrow at the masked Jonin. Let's just say, I know a few people. The blonde grinned. And it's not like your tardiness is an S-ranked village secret. Kakashi merely frowned at the jab towards his habits before shrugging it off. Filing away the little tidbit of information that the blonde genin supposedly knew people who had connections within the Anbu. Alright my cute little genin, today we're Naruto-kun. A voice rang out across the training ground, prompting the 4 members of Team 7 to look at its owner. Seeing a brown-haired teenage girl running towards the group, namely the blonde. The young woman had dark brown hair that was tied up into 2 buns on each side of her head, giving her a very panda-esque appearance. Wearing a pink sleeveless kipao-style blouse with red trimmings, and dark green pants. Along her neck hung a silver chained necklace with a crimson sun pendant. Sorry for the intrusion, Kakashi-sensei. The girl bowed before turning her attention to Naruto. Reaching into her pouch, she produced a small bundle and offered it to the young man. Your order is ready, Naruto-kun. Ah, fantastic, thank you very much Tenten-chan. The blonde grinned as he accepted the pouch, opening it carefully to expose a set of freshly forged kunai. Please, put it on my tab and I will be by later to settle it. Is that all? The now identified Tenten teased with a sly grin. You do drive a hard bargain. Naruto grumbled. Very well. I shall take you out to dinner this weekend, how does that sound? Perfect. The bun-haired girl grinned. Pick me up at 7, and don't be late. Sakura could only stare at the scene before her, unsure of how to respond. Naruto had just brazenly asked another girl out on a date in front of her, and behind Ino's back. She was sure once she told her former rival about this, she would surely snap out of whatever influence the blonde baka had her under. Of course, this led to another question for the Pinkett. Why was this new girl also so interested in her blonde teammate? Alright, the blonde waved off the bossy brunette. I'll be sure to let Ino-chan know as well. Good, I miss hanging out with her. Tenten stated. Anyways, I gotta go. More orders to fill. See you this weekend Naruto-kun. As the bun-haired brunette departed the training field, Each of the members of Team 7 cast a curious glance towards the blonde. What? He asked. How do you know Tenten Higurashi? Kakashi inquired, knowing full well the girl was at least a year ahead of the blonde. Met about 2 years back. Naruto shrugged. I always go to her when I need shinobi supplies, since her craftsmanship is second to none. You know you can get just as good gear from the Armored Leaf, and at a better deal. The masked Jonin offered. I am a strong believer of getting what you pay for. The blonde stated. I trust Ten-chan's work with my life, and she's the only person I will go to when I need something made. Anyways, let's get started with today's assignments. Kakashi said with an eye smile, as 2 of the 3 genins groaned in protest, knowing the masked pervert was planning on running them through more teamwork drills. Unknown to all of them, Naruto had subtly replaced himself with a shadow clone. Uzumaki home, evening hours. Ino had spared no expense in preparing this evening's dinner for the inevitable confrontation with her parents. More so for her father, as the mont's only fault was being an overprotective father looking out for his little princess. Her mother on the other hand was no doubt going to be a problem, though Ino was ready for whatever the woman would throw at them. After all, the gossip queen of Konoha had a juicy little tidbit of information about her own mother that was going to shake the very foundations of her parents' relationship. The blonde mind walker had prepared a sizable banquet, mixing dishes from both east and west. Using various recipes she liked from Naruto's mother's recipes, as well as some local cuisine she knew her father would enjoy. Naruto had attempted to help her in the kitchen, key word, attempted, but she was quick to shoo him out, though grateful for his effort nonetheless. Shortly after Ino had set the table, the seal warning the duo of visitors alerted the 2 that their guests arrived. Giving the blonde Jinchuriki a nod in confirmation, the 2 made their way to the entrance of their new home to greet their guests. Sure enough, standing outside the property gate was Ino's parents. Her father still have a look of apprehension on his face, while her mother shot a look of disdain towards the blonde boy. Ah, welcome to our home Inoichi Dono, Himiko Dono. Naruto smiled as he greeted the couple. Please, come in. Doing a quick hand seal to allow entry, allowing the 2 to enter the property. Thank you for inviting us over, Uzumaki-san. The blonde male replied as Ino greeted him with a hug, his tone short but polite nonetheless. Himiko on the other hand remained silent, a scowl etched across her face as her eyes darted along the property. Looking for the smallest thing to complain about, though finding nothing that she could draw her husband's attention to. She desperately wanted to find something her husband wouldn't approve of and force their daughter to come home and not stay with that thing any longer. In a word, the woman was completely upset. She had thought she had guided her daughter to pursue the lone Uchiha, in hopes of gaining access to the Uchiha family's massive wealth. Instead, she had learned from her husband that her daughter had been in a relationship with the demon spawn, and from what Inoichi had told her, it was clear the 2 had been secretly dating for some time now. Meaning Ino's entire pursuit of the Uchiha was a facade she had put up, which only further disappointed the blonde woman. Upon entering the home, a mouth-watering aroma filled their nostrils as the couple were greeted by the sight of the tantalizing banquet their daughter had prepared for them. Almost as if in shock, Inoichi turned towards Ino, seeing an extremely proud look on her face. Did you prepare all of this? He asked. Yup. Ino beamed as Naruto placed an approving hand on her shoulder, allowing the young blonde woman to grasp it lovingly. It's a mixture of dishes from both east and west. It certainly smells good, Himiko commented, turning her attention towards her daughter. Did you prepare this all by yourself or did Naruto-kun was a dear and did offer to help me? Ino interrupted. However, I insisted on preparing dinner myself. So he helped in other areas, setting the table and such. I do what I can to please you, Naruto replied, as he kissed his girlfriend's hand, earning an amused look from the girl's father, and a deepened scowl from the mother. For the most part, Inoichi was surprisingly pleased with how the young man had been treating his daughter. Due to his many years of service inside the torture and interrogation corps, the blonde man was able to pick up that the two had an extremely deep connection to one another. No doubt due to years of seeing one another in secret, as well as no doubt training in secret as well. Which lead to a question the blonde man was looking to find an answer for. So, Uzumaki-san, please, call me Naruto. The blonde Jinchuriki interjected as he pulled out a chair to seat his blonde lover at the table, while Inoichi mirrored the same act with his own wife. Very well, Naruto. Inoichi nodded. As I understand it, you and my daughter have been seeing each other in secret for a while now. I am curious though, why the secrecy? Well, Inoichi dono. Naruto began, taking his own seat as Ino proceeded to dish plates for her parents. I am not blind to how a majority of the villagers view me, nor am I naive enough to believe that these same villagers would not stoop so low as to attack those who I hold dear, just to harm me. So, the secrecy then was for the safety of my daughter then, and not because you were ashamed to be seen with her. The blonde man surmised as he took a bite from the food his daughter had served him. Noting its rich flavor, he made a mental note to ask if his daughter would be willing to part with the recipe. With all due respect, Inoichi dono. The blonde Jinchuriki chuckled. Any man that would be ashamed to be seen with your daughter should have their brains monkey stomped and mailed back to their mother. Inoichi couldn't help but chuckle to himself at the young man's blunt response. I still don't get it. Himiko began, turning towards her daughter. Why did you choose Naruto-san over someone of higher pedigree like Sasuke? At this, Inoichi could only groan. His wife had made it no secret that she was pushing for their daughter to pursue the boy, especially after he became the sole survivor of his clan's massacre at the hands of his own brother. Naruto, on the other hand, remained quiet since the question, while a jab at his orphan status was directed towards his beautiful yellow rose. Well, Naruto-kun has everything I am looking for in a man. Ino casually responded, gently patting his hand. He's smart, skilled, and not to mention compassionate and attentive. But is his trustworthy? Her mother pursued. After all, he did hide his potential from not only his other classmates, but also Hokage-sama himself. He could be hiding other things as well. Himiko, that's enough. Inoichi sighed, trying to de-escalate the situation that his wife was creating. Then that would mean I am untrustworthy as well. The young blonde woman stated, looking her mother in the eyes. After all, I hid my skills from everyone as well. However, deception is the bread and butter of being a shinobi. If our own comrades are unaware of what we are truly capable of, then neither are our enemies. Her father couldn't help but frown at that reminder. Since it was true that many shinobi would hide their abilities from one another. I still think you should have continued your pursuit for Uchiha-sama and been a loyal wife to him, like I am to your father. So what you're saying, Himiko-san, Naruto began, taking a sip from the wine glass that accompanied the meal, is that you would prefer your daughter to be in an emotional, and potentially physically abusive relationship with an individual that has already displayed red flags for mental instability. The woman in question couldn't help but scowl at the boy's audacity to insult the sole Uchiha. Though before she could retort, Ino had scoffed before leveling a glare at her own mother. Loyal to father, huh? Ino snorted, catching her father's attention. Then explain these. Reaching into her pocket, she tossed out a handful of photos. Photos that made Himiko's blood run cold, and Inoichi's to boil. Spread across the dinner table were various pictures of the woman engaging in UAL acts with one Asuma Sarutobi. A tired sigh escaped the elder man's lips as his keen eye scanned over the mission documents before him. Many would assume that the Hokage just randomly tossed mission scrolls to the genin teams that entered his office, but in reality, each mission was carefully scrutinized and set aside for the appropriate team that met the criteria to complete the mission. However, at the moment, the elder man was on the lookout for particular missions that would best be suited for two particular teams. Namely Teams 7 and 10. After the fallout last month between Inoichi and his now ex-wife, Himiko, the elder Mind Walker had been on the hunt for Asuma, threatening to do unimaginable things to the womanizing Sarutobi's mind when he caught him. The overprotective father had even moved to have Ino herself removed from the younger Sarutobi's team, but due to a combination of laws, lack of open teams, and a bit of coercion from his own daughter had allayed the Mont's concerns, if only slightly. Meanwhile, the now scorned former Yamanaka had placed Naruto in her sights, blaming the boy for the actions her daughter had done. While not a threat to the young man, it was still an annoyance nonetheless, and one he particularly had no desire to entertain. Hence his desire to get both teams out of the village for a short time to allow things to blow over. Picking up the next scroll, he broke the seal and unraveled and began to read over the request. The first thing that caught his attention was the small insignia in the lower right-hand corner of the scroll. A simple crimson sun, signifying that this particular request came from a member of the syndicate. The official mission was fairly straightforward. The current daimyo of Tori no Kuni sought to form a trade agreement with Konoha. It seems that young Toki-san has succeeded her father. The elder man silently mused, though he didn't dwell on how exactly she succeeded her father, knowing full well such politics were filled with cloak and dagger schemes. Still, a diplomatic mission would be perfect for Team 10, with the Nara's intellect and the Akamaki's friendliness. Not to mention, Ino-sama would be able to handle the underlying agenda for the Shiok. So, that takes care of Team 10, he continued to muse as he filed the Tori mission away for Ino's team and continued to scour through the pile of mission scrolls. Now for Team 7. However, as he opened the next scroll, he felt his blood run cold. Client: Tazuna, the super bridge builder. Country: Nami no Kuni. Mission details: shipping mogul Gato has aggressively taken over the small country of Nami no Kuni, killing the previous ruling daimyo. Crimes committed by Gato and his men are, but not limited to, murder, the kidnapping young women to entertain the men, forgery, grand larceny, theft, and other numerous accounts. Gato is known to employ rogue shinobi to assist in his operations, as well as dishonored samurai and common thugs. Mission grade: A. Reward offered: severely reduced tariffs on trade goods from Nami no Kuni to Hai no Kuni. What is Gato doing in Nami no Kuni? The elder man narrowed his eye as he rolled up the mission scroll and filed it away from Team 7. He wasn't sure if this was a blessing or not, considering what the mission entailed, but at least it got the blonde Jinchuriki out of the village for a while. Naruto-sama is not going to be happy when he hears of this. Hokage's office. Later that morning, Hiruzen could only sigh as he looked at the two teams that stood before his desk to collect their missions for the day. As soon as the two teams had arrived in the room, both Naruto and Ino had separated from their respected team members and engaged in some mild forms of public displays of affection. It wasn't missed that both Asuma and Sakura were glaring at the two, though both for entirely different reasons. The elder village leader knew that his estranged son lusted after the young Yamanaka heiress, and that seeing her all over the blonde Jinchuriki was no doubt dealing a massive blow to the younger Sarutobi's ego. Not to mention the whole fiasco last month between his son and the Yamanaka's mother, it was clear that Asuma was at least partially blaming Naruto for what had transpired. Not wanting to admit that it was his own fault that he had wound up in such a scandalous situation that had prompted his official girlfriend, Kurenai, to break it off with him. Unknown to him, the Genjutsu mistress was merely using the affair as an excuse to end their farce relationship. On the other side of the room, Sakura Haruno eyed the couple with scrutiny with narrowed eyes, looking for any signs that her former best friend was under any sort of genjutsu that forced her to be the supposed dead last of the class. Still not willing to accept that the blonde heiress had no interest in the last Uchiha. Ino of course had seen the look of her former best friend, but had merely shrugged it off. Perhaps she did her fangirl act a little too well. Good morning, Team 7 and Team 10. The Hokage created the group before him, getting everyone's attention. Well, Mostly everyone. Kakashi still had his nose buried in his favorite orange book, and both Naruto and Ino were more focused on each other as they whispered back and forth in hushed voices. Naruto-kun, Ino-chan. If you would, please. Hiruzen coughed slightly, catching to two young adults' attention. Hey. Sorry old man. The blonde Jinchuriki sheepishly grinned, scratching the back of his head. It's just been so long since I seen my Kiroi Bara. Naruto-kun, you two live together. The Hokage deadpanned. Well, yeah, the young man conceded, but it's been 2 hours since I've seen her. Anyways, Asuma glared at Naruto before turning his attention towards his father. Why did you summon us, Pops? I have summoned both of your teams here because both teams were highly recommended for a pair of missions outside of the village. The old man began to explain, scanning over the group of genin, gauging their reaction. With Sakura and Shikamaru, he saw concern. Though the Nara was no doubt concerned about how troublesome it was going to be to travel anywhere outside the village. While the Haruno girl was no doubt feeling ill-prepared for a mission outside of the village. With Sasuke and Chojo, the elder man saw excitement. The Uchiha excited at the prospect of testing his abilities, while the Akamichi was no doubt looking forward to trying new food dishes. Lastly was the blonde lovers, both of which sported an air of calm confidence. Which in regards to Naruto, didn't surprise the elder village leader any, knowing by the young mont's own admission that he had traveled the elemental nations for a number of years with a mysterious woman, having only returned to the village 4 years ago to enroll in the Shinobi Academy. Something that the elder man wasn't too keen on, since the young blonde spent a good decade outside of the village walls with an unknown. However, Hiruzen didn't want to push too hard on that particular topic with the young man. Opting instead to try and gain his trust in hopes that Naruto would open up about the mysterious woman he had traveled with. For Team 10, you will be traveling to Tori no Kuni to speak with the newly instated daimyo, Toki Nagasawa, whom had recently succeeded her father, Awashi. Hiruzen explained, shaking off his former train of thoughts. Hearing this, both Naruto and Ino quirked an eyebrow. Grinning, Naruto turned to his lover and leaned in. Be sure to stop by and get a bottle of Yuki Nigori strawberry sake, she loves that stuff. He whispered, earning a small giggle from the Yamanaka heiress, which did not got unnoticed by the other occupants of the room. Team 7, you get to travel to Nami no Kuni. The elder village leader continued, tossing Kakashi his team's mission scroll, deciding to ignore the chatter between the two blondes. Apparently, the shipping mogul, Gato has taken over the small country and has been running it dry. Hearing this, both blondes' eyes narrowed dangerously as they recognized the Mon's name. However, they didn't get a chance to dwell on it long, as the elder man paged his secretary to show the client from Nami no Kuni in. An elderly-looking man with a strong stench of alcohol rolling off of him, and not the good quality stuff, but rather the cheap stuff that smelled like a pig pissed it out, prompting both Naruto and Ino to channel chakra into their armor, forming a gas mask of some kind to cover their mouth and nose. Much to the jealousy of the others in the room. So which group is my escort? The alcoholic slurred out, already inebriated. That would be my team, sir. Kakashi answered, stepping forward. My name is Kakashi Hatake, and these are my students. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Naruto Uzumaki. Great, the client sighed. I get 3 boys and a cripple. I'm a girl, Sakura exclaimed, her face red with fury as she ed her fist back to pummel the drunken old man, only to be stopped by Kakashi. Meanwhile, both Naruto and Ino couldn't help but snicker at the Pinket's unfortunate misidentification. Unlike Ino and other girls in their graduating class, Sakura just didn't fill out as well, giving her a rather flat physique. No doubt, due to her dieting that she had started early in her pre-teen years. Anyways, Kakashi spoke, ignoring the insult the client had tossed at him. Team 7, gather what supplies you will need for the mission and meet at the gates in 2 hours. Same for you, Team 10. Asuma added as Kakashi lead the client out of the office, followed closely by Sasuke and Sakura. 2 hours, huh? Naruto mused loudly. More than enough time to grab a bite to eat. What do you think, my lovely Kiroi Bara? I would love to. The Yamanaka heiress grinned, grasping her lover's hand. You are to be preparing for a mission, not going on a date. Asuma reprimanded the two, earning a scoff of dismissal from the blonde Jinchuriki. Already got everything we need. Naruto responded with a shrug before turning back to Ino. Shall we? Let's. She replied, departing the office with her blonde lover. With a frustrated sigh, Asuma was about to depart before a cough from his father stopped him. Mind yourself while you're outside of Konoha, Asuma. Hiruzen warned with a firm voice. You're already under enough public scrutiny due to your relations with Himiko. You don't have to remind me, Pops, I get it. The younger Sarutobi groaned, not wanting to get lectured, again. Hell, he felt no guilt in what he had done. If Inoichi had satisfied his woman more, she wouldn't have come to him in the first place. Asuma's only regret was that Kurenai had found out, costing him a chance at getting with one of the hottest pieces of asses in the village. Rivaled only by Anko, perhaps. Not giving the old man time to continue the tongue lashing, Asuma quickly departed the office. Ramen Ichiraku. So, both of you got assignments outside of the village. And in a twist of irony, both missions are connected to the family business. The brown-haired ramen waitress grinned, knowing full well the mission selection was anything but ironic. Well, only one is officially family business. Naruto stated with a slight scowl. That bastard was supposed to remain in Kurigakure, supplying the rebels. He better have a son of a bitch. What is it, Naruto-kun? Both girls looked at the young criminal kingpin. That's probably why I haven't heard from Kaiza-san or Tsunami-san. The blonde frowned. Bastard probably moved in and took over their operation. Do you think Tsunami-san is? Ayame questioned with a concerned expression. I don't know. I hope not. Naruto sighed. Why couldn't this have happened while we were still in the damn academy? Could have easily went to Nami no Kuni and dealt with the bastard and returned with no one being the wiser, but, now I am going to be forced to travel at the pace of others. All I know, is that I am going to impale that fat ass head on a pike when I get there. I don't even know why you put him in charge of anything to begin with. Ino frowned. While she had never met the slimy man, thankfully, just reading over his file gave her a bad feeling about him. Kaiza vouched up and down for him. He answered with a frown. So, there's a chance Kaiza betrayed us as well. Ino speculated, earning a nod from her fellow blonde. Which means, Naruto sighed. Once we settle this shit, going to have to clean house, so to speak. Ensure there are no other potential surprises. If you would Ayame-chan, keep an ear to the ground for anything of interest. Just don't endanger yourself. No problem, Naruto-kun. The ramen waitress smiled. Ayame. A voice called out from behind the brown-haired young woman. If you're done flirting with your boyfriend over there, I need your help filling these orders. This earned a round of chuckles from the two blondes at the ramen waitress's expense, but it was a much-needed distraction from the former topic the three of them had been discussing. Smirking some, Ayame leaned over the counter and gave the blonde Jinchuriki a light kiss on the lips. I doubt it needs to be said, but both of you take care of yourselves. Ayame commented, before turning to aid her father as the lunch rush for the small ramen stand begun to filter in. Don't overthink things right now, Naruto-kun. Ino stated, catching the blonde's attention. You'll just mentally exhaust yourself. Gather all the information you can first, and then act. Naruto could only chuckle to himself, since the Yamanaka's words sounded almost like his adoptive mother's, when she was lecturing him about rushing into things when he was a bit younger. Yes, mother. He teased, earning a soft punch to the shoulder. What the hell, Naruto baka? A voice sounded from behind the two blondes, prompting both to turn and greet the new arrival in the form of one Sakura Haruno, accompanied with Sasuke and Kakashi. You're supposed to be getting ready for our mission, not going on a date. Relax, forehead. Ino commented. We're already packed and ready to go. Then where are your packs? The Pinkett challenged. They're called storage seals, Haruno-san. Naruto replied without looking up from his food. Far more functional than carrying a heavy backpack that would impede your movements. And just how do you know how to use them, Naruto? The masked Jonin inquired. That is not something that is taught in the academy. Well, it should be. The blonde Jinchuriki retorted. Even the most basic of Fuinjutsu would be a massive boost in skills for aspiring genin. As for how I know it, my mother taught me. At the word, mother, Kakashi visibly stiffened. And just where is your mother? He asked, after composing himself once more, earning a small grin from the blonde. Went back west to settle some business. Was the Jinchuriki's vague answer before checking the time. 30 minutes before we have to meet at the front gates. Will you be on time, Kakashi-sensei, or should we expect you to arrive 3 hours late, as usual? Kakashi could only frown in response, though he could see that the rest of his genin team was also curious as to what his answer would be. With a reluctant sigh, the masked Jonin nodded. Just be at the gates in half an hour. He relented. Just enough time to see a few people before we head off then. Naruto stated as he stood up, and paid for the two blondes' meals, giving Ayame a wink as he did so before leaving the ramen stand. All while ignoring the questioning looks his team was giving him as he walked away with Ino by his side. Konoha main gates, 30 minutes later. Naruto and Ino were not the least bit surprised to see Kakashi actually arrive on time for the mission, unlike the rest of the gathered genin, whom were looking at the silver-haired Jonin as if he had grown a second head. Alright, Nami no Kuni is only a few days' travel from here. Kakashi began to instruct his team, hoping to prepare them as best he could mentally for what was no doubt going to happen during this mission. As this is an A-rank mission, we can expect to be attacked by enemy shinobi. All of you may very well get your first kill on this mission. Hearing this, both Sakura and Sasuke paled visibly, whilst Naruto merely shrugged his shoulders in an uncaring manner, earning a quirked eyebrow from the masked Jonin, but remained silent about the blonde's attitude for the time being. Making a note to question him about it later. See you when you get back, Naruto-kun. Ino smiled, as she leaned in and gave the blonde an affectionate kiss. Look after yourself, my little princess. He smiled. Come on Ino, let's go. Asuma cut in as he pulled Ino away from the boy, earning himself a scowl from his female student as he did so, which he ignored. We have a long trip ahead of us. Troublesome. Shikamaru groaned. Giving the bearded Jonin a knowing smirk, Naruto turned and followed after his team, leaving the members of Team 10 alone once more to set off on their own mission. Once the blonde was well out of earshot, the younger Sarutobi turned towards his team. Let's get going, before Ino's boyfriend comes back and delays us even more. He commented, though it wasn't miss the amount of venom he put on the word, boyfriend. Why, Asuma-sensei, you sound jealous. Ino taunted. Still think you would be better off finding yourself a real man. The bearded Jonin shrugged, trying not to let the young blonde's comment get under his skin. Not some boy pretending to be a man. Oh, Naruto-kun is a real man. The Yamanaka grinned, as she saw her prodding was starting to aggravate the womanizer. At least he has no need to sneak around and sleep with married women. Both Shikamaru and Choji couldn't help but flinch at the low blow that their teammate had just delivered to their sensei. Wisely, Asuma opted not to retort, seeing that the girl was baiting him into acting out. No doubt for her own amusement. This is going to be a troublesome mission. The lazy Nara commented. Can't be that bad, can it? Choji asked as he fell into step alongside his best friend, munching on a bag of chips. No doubt, Asuma-sensei is going to continue to try and get into Ino's pants. Shikamaru began his speculation, not at all blind as to what the bearded Jonin was known for, and admittedly, Ino had become a rather beautiful and desirable woman. And Ino is going to continue to taunt him. Whole thing is troublesome. For his part, Choji remained silent, as he considered his friend's words. Meanwhile, Asuma followed behind his team, all the while pondering what this new daimyo of Tori no Kuni would be like. His only information was that it was a young female by the name of Toki Nagasawa, and that she had succeeded her father. A grin spreading across his face, as he imagined various ways to woo the young woman. Unaware that the woman had already been claimed by a certain blonde. That was the best word to describe the atmosphere that greeted Team 7 as they trudged behind Tazuna through the village. It felt as if all happiness and joy had been edged out of the town, leaving only a sense of foreboding and depression hanging in the air. Children that should have been laughing and playing in the streets were huddled up against decrepit buildings, trying to make themselves as small as possible at the sight of the newcomers, cowering in fear. What was once a clean and paved primary road through the center of the village was now littered with trash, debris and in serious disrepair as deep ruts carved up the street. On each side of the street were dozens of run-down buildings with their windows boarded up, doors falling off and broken windows with the telltale signs of the place being robbed of whatever it had. A few of the buildings even had scorch marks from when a fires had broken out. However, what made Naruto's blood boil was the sight of various women crying in the alleyways between the buildings, covering their faces in shame due to the acts they had to perform just to keep their families safe and fed. I swear to Kami, I am going to gut that fat, greedy, feed him his own entrails and then shove his severed head up his ass. Naruto silently seethed as he took a moment to readjust Kakashi's limp weight on his back. Not even an hour ago, they had encountered one Zabuza Momochi, the infamous demon of the hidden mist, a missing nin from Kurigakure and a former member of Kiri's famed swordsman of the mist. At first, Kakashi had toyed with the swordsman, poking at his defense before moving in for the kill, a kill that had seemingly been stolen by another masked individual. A supposed hunter nin from Kurigakure that had been hunting Zabuza. Something Naruto doubted, since the hunter had insisted upon taking the body instead of disposing of it on the spot, as was the standard rule when killing missing nin. Shortly after the hunter nin had left, Kakashi had passed out due to using the implanted Sharingan eye for too long. Something that Naruto had found to be absolutely stupid on the silver-haired mon's part, since it was clear that the chakra drain from the eye was due to a poor connection in the optical nerve endings, since the eye was transplanted on the battlefield by the mon's then teammate, Rin. Which was the reason why said man was limply hung over the blonde young mon's shoulder, since his other two teammates have proven to be worthless when it came to helping their own sensei. In the case of Sakura, she simply did not have the physical strength to carry the unconscious man. Focusing what little training she did on chakra theory and application, when she wasn't obsessing over the Uchiha, rather than the more physical aspect of becoming a kunoichi. As for the Uchiha, the supposed prodigy and last survivor of the cursed clan had simply felt that helping Kakashi was below his status as an Uchiha elite, making the blonde scoff at his arrogance. Finding it ironic that he would think himself an elite, despite his older brother, whom was a prodigy, was still alive in the cause of his current status of being the last loyal Uchiha, in Konoha. Though he would admit that the Uchiha was skilled, though nowhere near the level to be considered an elite among his peers. How long has it been like this, Tazuna-san? Sakura meekly inquired as she took in the depressing sight around her. Gato came into town about 6 months ago. The elder bridge builder began, taking another swig of his bottle. When he first arrived, we didn't think anything about it. He moved into town, promising new job, good pay and the usual. Damned able thing, he actually followed through with his promises. Up until 3 months ago, that is. What happened? The Pinkett inquired, turning her attention to the old man. It all went to shit, came Tazuna's blunt response. Those that had eagerly accepted the jobs Gato had provided were the first victims of his cruelty. Gato had exploited the personal information of his newly acquired employees, targeting their families first. Threatening that as long as they did what they were told, their families would be safe. Didn't matter. Bastards still kidnapped their wives and daughters for future employment, options, and killed their sons to completely break them. Sakura had paled at the implied fate that the women were no doubt suffering at this very moment, making her feel nauseous at the thought. Naruto, on the other hand, had a deep scowl upon his face as he continued to imagine painful ways to end Gato's life. The Uchiha, on the other hand, was a different story as he merely scoffed, thinking the weak fools deserved what they had gotten if they were not strong enough to defend themselves. At any rate, my house is only 10 minutes from here. The elder man grunted, taking another drink from his gourd in hopes to wash away the memories that plagued him. Especially that of his now estranged grandson. Tazuna's house, 10 minutes later. True to the old bridge builder's word, it took the group no longer than 10 minutes to arrive at his home. It was an impressive two-story building built on top of the water on top of a large wooden deck supported by numerous stone pillars to keep the structure above the water that was located well out of the main town, giving Tazuna and his family a sense of privacy the other residents did not have. Off to the side of the main building was a windmill-like structure, no doubt used to generate electricity for the home using the wind and the water undercurrents, as well as other various uses. As for the house itself, it looked to be a rather spacious home. Naruto estimated that it had at least 5 separate bedrooms, potentially 2 bathrooms, and a sizable sitting room and dining area. The blonde couldn't say for sure, since the only time he had come through Nami no Kuni was to speak solely with Tsunami and Kaiza, and that was done in private well away from their respective homes, since Tsunami had made it clear that while she would work with Kaiza, she would not allow him into her home. Here we are. Tazuna spoke up as he led the group to the door and proceeded to knock loudly on it before opening the door. Tsunami honey, I'm home. The elder man was greeted with a solid thud as a cast iron frying pan made contact with the mont's head, sending him to the floor in a heap with a low groan. Much to the shock of the conscious members of Team 7. What were you thinking, father? Disappearing for 2 weeks like that without telling anyone. Do you know how worried I was? Scolded a young woman, before she turned and noticed the team of shinobi gawking at the door. Her eyes scanning over each of them shrewdly, before her eyes settled on Naruto himself, causing her to gasp slightly as her eyes widened a fraction. Do you always have to use the frying pan? Tazuna complained from the floor, rubbing his head, turning the attention to himself as he pushed himself off the floor with another grunt. Anyways, I left to hire this group of ninja to help. I see, the woman stated, turning her attention back to the group. I thank you for looking after my father. I know he can be a handful at times. It's okay, Tsunami-chan. Naruto spoke first, surprising all present. It's been a while, hasn't it? Yeah, it has, Naruto-kun. The now identified Tsunami replied, though the blonde could hear the hesitance in her voice, making him inwardly frown. Shit, she probably thinks I am here to either finish the job the bastard started, or to punish her for failing. Naruto thought to himself. Going to have to pull her away soon and talk to her about it. You two know each other? Tazuna questioned, looking between his daughter and the blonde shinobi. Yes, we met, what was it, almost 5 years ago now. Naruto explained as he thought back to when he met the dark blue-haired woman. In Cha no Kuni, if I recall. Sakura could only gawk. While it was common knowledge that the blonde-haired young man had disappeared from the village roughly 7 years ago, she hadn't honestly expected him to have traveled around the elemental nations. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew their client's daughter, she would have outright accused the blonde of lying to make himself sound cooler. Actually, it was 4 years ago, just before you returned to Konoha. Tsunami pointed out with a soft smile. And it was in Na no Kuni. Alright, the merchant caravan. The blonde chuckled, remembering a certain encounter that had happened on that trip with a certain vixen with light brown hair and captivating purple eyes that had lasted well into the morning hours. Yeah, the merchant caravan. Tsunami repeated, a light blush dusting her cheeks. Remembering another series of rather intimate events that had happened on that trip. As much as I want to catch up with you, Tsunami-chan. Naruto spoke up, breaking the BlueNet out of her trip down memory lane. Do you have anywhere we can set down our extra baggage? Tsunami blinked a moment, before realizing that the blonde young man had the still unconscious form of their team sensei on his back. Yes, right this way. She replied, leading Naruto up the stairs and into an empty bedroom with a lone futon by the open window, which gave a pleasant view of the open water. Naruto took care to lay the man down gently on the bedding, being sure to support his head before allowing it to rest easy on the pillow. He should be fine, just needs some rest. The blonde stated, as he finished tucking the silver-haired man into bed before standing up and looking to the other two members of his team. In the meantime, we should rest up and prepare for training tomorrow. And why should we listen to you, Dobi? Sasuke questioned in defiance, with Sakura adding in her own 2 bits, supporting her precious Uchiha. Both earning a scowl from their hostess, and an amused grin from the blonde in question. Whatever, I was merely suggesting what we should do. Naruto shrugged in an uncaring manner. But hey, if you want to slack off and get yourself killed the next time we fight Zabuza and his partner, then that's on you. You idiot! Sakura exclaimed. Zabuza is dead. Kakashi-sensei checked it himself, baka. No, Zabuza is still alive. A tired voice spoke up from the bedroom, prompting the rest of the team to turn and look at the now awake Kakashi, whom was staring up at the ceiling. But, Kakashi-sensei, Sakura stammered, a wave of fear washing over her as she remembered the terrifying killing intent the swordsman had put out. You checked him yourself and confirmed he was dead. I did, the silver-haired Jonin admitted. But, a death-like trance could have created a very convincing illusion. But how? The Pinkett inquired. Those needles the hunter Nin used can be deadly, if they hit a vital spot. Kakashi began to explain. But, they were originally designed as medical tools. Kakashi paused in his explanation and looked over his students. Unsurprising, Sakura had an expression of fear written across her face, which was to be understandable. Having to be faced with such a strong enemy fresh out of the academy. Sasuke had an expression of eagerness, anticipating his chance to test his mettle against the swordsman and his accomplice the next time they met. As for Naruto, the blonde had merely adopted a relaxed pose, leaning against the door frame. Calm, and collected, almost as if they were discussing the weather, instead of the man that wants their client dead still running around. So how did you come to the conclusion that Zabuza was still alive? The masked Jonin asked the blonde. Simple. Naruto shrugged. Hunter Nin are supposed to dispose of the body right there on site, not carry it off to another location. The more witnesses, the better. So, what are we going to do now, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura inquired, looking to her bed-ridden sensei. We rest for the day. The man replied, almost mirroring exactly what Naruto said earlier. Tomorrow, I will start training you for our next confrontation with Zabuza and his partner. This earned a short affirmative grunt from the Uchiha, and an obedient, hi, from the Pinkett, causing the blonde to scoff at the display. Something wrong, Naruto? Kakashi asked. Nah, nothing. The blonde shrugged it off, casting a glance at his 2 teammates. Other than I stated the same damn thing, only to be met with insults and disregard. But when it comes from someone of a higher rank, it's all sunshine and daisies, showing that these two cannot think for themselves outside of their narrowed-minded interests. The Uchiha's ego is going to get himself and others killed one of these days, and at the very least, Haruno would make good cannon fodder with her desire to be the teacher's pet, and never questioning what she is told. Both Sasuke and Sakura glared at Naruto, whereas Kakashi had narrowed his visible eye at the young man. Naruto, we are supposed to be a team. The cycloptic Jonin chastised. And your attitude is not helping. Seeing that this was the start of a conversation she wanted no part in, Tsunami quietly excused herself. Though she knew she would have to face the blonde young man by the end of the night, for better or for worse. Seeing this, Naruto mentally cursed, having wanted to talk with her immediately after they had arrived. Instead, his team had to be a bunch of ignorant, selfish wipes, and he wasn't entirely sure if Hataki was deliberately favoring one student over the others, or if the man was just that incompetent, and took what he deemed as the easy road when it came to leading a team. He could only hope that his friendly greeting towards her were proof enough that he was not upset with her. My attitude? The blonde questioned, peering down at Kakashi. You stand by with your thumb up your while these two constantly try to degrade me, berate me, insult me, and downplay anything I say. The Uchiha's ego and arrogance is bigger than his actual skill set, which is going to get either himself, or those around him killed one of these days, and Haruno can't get her tongue out of the Uchiha scrack long enough to form an independent thought of her own. Instead, she just blindly follows orders and does the bare minimum in her training. And all of this, you allow to happen under your watch. Naruto continued. Meanwhile, I worked Mito the bone to get the skills I have now. When we were saddled with all those glorified chores the civilians were too lazy to do themselves, I was the one putting in all the work while the rest of you ed off. The Uchiha thinks himself above such menial tasks, while Sakura fingered herself as she fantasized about his. Meanwhile you can't even take your head out of that damned able porn for more than 5 seconds at a time, and when you do, you single me out. Sasuke fumed in anger at the blonde's remarks, while Sakura blushed in complete embarrassment at what was just said about her. Meanwhile, Kakashi had the decency to look abashed, being the focus of the blonde's outlet that had clearly been bottling up for some time, no doubt, since the team's creation. And the difference between me and them, he continued, not allowing Kakashi to say anything, is that I am at least willing to work with them on a professional level. Simply to get the job done. Silence hung over the members of Team 7, unsure of what to make of the blonde member's tirade he had just unleashed on their sensei. Now, if you'll excuse me, Naruto huffed, turning to move towards the door. I would like to go and catch up with a friend I haven't seen in 4 years. Just how do you know the client's daughter? Kakashi ventured to ask, thankful to have something to move the topic away from the previous subject. You should know. The blonde shrugged, with a knowing grin. Since you've been awake since just after we entered the town. Deciding not to stick around for any further interrogation or bitching from his teammates, Naruto quickly departed the room and quickly made his way down the stairs. Reaching up, he placed his hand over where his tattoo was on his chest and channeled a small amount of chakra into it. The result was immediate, as it honed in on the necklace that Tsunami was wearing. Smirking, Naruto left the house. Back porch, outside, the dark blue-haired woman sighed as she gazed out over the water, reflecting on the past 6 months. First, Gato had shown up out of nowhere with his crew from Kirigakure and had essentially endeared himself to the people of Nami no Kuni with promises of jobs, wealth and security before he had even approached her as to why he was here. And when the slimy bastard did decide to grace her with his presence, he had come with some bullshit explanation that he had been sent to take over her operation, and to make matters worse for her, Kaiza, that backstabbing bastard, had sided with him. Making her feel like this entire setup had been planned between the two of them in secret. Then there was Inari, the ungrateful little shit that she had taken into her home not even 2 years ago when she came upon his malnourished form when he was living on the streets, had joined his idol in working with Gato, only for the pudgy wannabe crime lord to turn the boy against his own idol with money and fresh girls to break in and release his hormonal frustrations upon. The very thought disgusted her to no end. Lastly, there was the aforementioned backstabber, Kazuya. When it was obvious that Gato and his crew were not here as per Naruto's orders, Kaiza had approached her with a simple message. Stay quiet, and her father would be safe. It also didn't help that with both him and Gato working to block her, she was effectively cut off from contacting Naruto in any way, leaving her cut off and isolated. It was a sheer miracle that her father had managed to sneak away to Konoha. She stiffened when she felt a pair of arms wrap around her waist and pull her back towards the man behind her. I am glad you're safe, Tsunami-chan. Naruto whispered into her neck, causing her to shiver slightly as the blonde's breath nipped at her neck. Turning around, she looked into his blue eyes and saw a fire mixture of fiery rage, hatred, and anger, but not towards her. For herself, she could see true, genuine concern in her safety, causing her to blush slightly. "You're not upset with me?" she tentatively inquired. "I could never be upset with you, Sumi-chan." The blonde smiled. "If anything, I am more upset at myself for not keeping a better eye on things. Only after my team received your father's request, did it dawn on me that I had heard nothing from you or Kaiza in months. So please, forgive me for not noticing it sooner." Tsunami stood silent, as her mind was processing the words that were spoken to her. In her mind, she had failed to do her job and keep things running smoothly here, but here was Naruto, the leader of the Shiok, blaming himself, and asking for her forgiveness. "No, I don't forgive you," she said, finding her voice once more. Not missing his body stiffen at her response. "Because you are not to blame, Naruto-kun. You have an entire unseen empire to watch over and cultivate, you can't reasonably expect for something like this not to happen. It was just unfortunate that it happened here. If we are to blame anyone," she continued, bringing her hand up to stroke the blonde's whisker marks on his cheeks, "then it should be Gato and Kaiza. Fortunately, Kaiza has already been dealt with." "Oh," Naruto quirked an eyebrow. 2 months ago the bastard propositioned me to be his woman." Tsunami scoffed in irritation, and did not miss the possessive, low growl that escaped Naruto's throat. "Turns out both him and Gato saw me as some sort of prize to be had. When I turned him down, he decided to force the issue. It was then that he remembered why I am known as Hiro no Shi. So that only leaves Gato and his goons to deal with, then." The whiskered blonde mused. However, Naruto had noticed something was missing within the home. "Forgive me for being invasive, but in the last correspondence I got from you, you mentioned you adopted a son. Rotten little bastard thanked me by running off with that bastard." The brunette growled, feeling slighted by the fact that she had shown the boy compassion and brought him under her wing, only for him to spit in her face. He originally left with Kaiza, who had become sort of a father figure for him. But soon after, Gato got his hooks into him, so now Inari is pretty much a miniature Gato. And just like Gato, he is short on time. She finished coldly, making it very clear what she intended to do. "Very well," Naruto stated, a grin tugging at his lips. "How about we reintroduce the Hiro no Shi to the world, once again?" Tsunami's grin matched his own. "I rather like that idea." She giggled. "Let me go slip on something more comfortable." 2 hours later, shipping port warehouse. The two had wasted no time in setting out from the house, under the guise that Tsunami had needed to head into town and had requested Naruto to accompany her. Given that it had already been established the two were old friends, as far as everyone else was concerned, they had simply let the two be. Figuring the two friends merely wanted to catch up with one another, thought it wasn't missed that Tazuna gave the typical, protective father, look towards the whiskered blonde, only to be met with a frying pan, courtesy of Tsunami. As for Kakashi, it was clear the masked Jonin had some questions for the blonde, questions that would remain unanswered. "What is the plan?" Tsunami asked as the two approached the warehouse in which Gato ran his dealings from. "Slaughter them all," Naruto simply stated. "If they are not loyal to the Shiok, then they are not allowed to live." "Good." The brunette smirked, licking her lips in anticipation. Well, 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 a voice broke the two from their small conversation. "Decide to finally give the boss your fine piece of Tsunami-chan." With a quick flick of her wrist, the woman buried a small blade deep into the guard's throat, causing him to make a gurgling sound as he collapsed to the ground. His partner didn't get a chance to respond as Naruto had swiftly lopped off his head. "I see Gato has lowered the standards when hiring," Naruto noted sarcastically. "The dumber the thug, the cheaper they are." Sharing a chuckle at the pudgy man's expense, the two continued on their way towards the massive building. Sounds of laughter, cheers, and shouts could be heard from the outside, signifying most, if not all of Gato's goons were inside. Which suited the two perfectly, since it would save them both a lot of time in hunting them all down. Entering the building, Naruto quickly slapped a paper to the wall, channeling a bit of chakra into it. As a result, faint lines and symbols began to spread across the entire complex. Doors, windows, everything was covered in these odd symbols. Giving his partner a nod, the two proceeded to where everyone had gathered in the main loading area, which had been repurposed as a sort of entertainment area for Gato and his crew. Along the walls were various stages, with women tied down in the most humiliating positions and stripped over their clothing, which now hung in rags off their bodies. Bruises and welts marred their young bodies, though from what the whiskered blonde could tell, they had not been violated just yet. No doubt due to Gato's sick tendency of having his victims mentally exhaust themselves with fear and anxiety before he completely broke them. In the center of the room itself, was a large wooden stage-like platform, where Gato was currently standing above a man who was crumpled to the floor, his pudgy hands crossed over one another atop his cane in a smug fashion as he watched the spectacle before him. That being of a teenage boy, no older than 14, beating the downed man with a crowbar. No doubt, the man was one of Tezuna's workers that had gotten caught and needed to be made an example of. Though it was clear by the lack of movement from the victim as well as the lack of sound of any kind coming from the limp form, that the man was already dead. Good job, my boy. Gato praised the teen's cruelty, before turning to a group of bound and gagged men behind him. Let this be a lesson for the lot of you not to cross me, or I will drag out your families before you and let little Inari here work on his swinging arm a bit more. Perhaps I'll even show your wives and daughters what a real man can do. Inari piped in with a grin, earning a series of muffled pleas, sounded out in fear from the bound workers. Then we understand each other. Gato chuckled darkly. Now tomorrow, you are going to tell Tezuna, you want nothing to do with his little bridge project. Until then, you will enjoy my hospitality. A series of laughter follow from random thugs, as they caught on to their boss's insinuation. While these guests were here, they were allowed to beat on them as much as they wanted, so long as they were still breathing and cold walk the next morning. You have got to be the stupidest sack of shit that I have ever seen. A voice broke through the crowd, resulting in immediate silence from the goons, and an insulted expression from the pudgy wannabe crime lord. Who the hell dares? Gato demanded, prompting the mob of thugs to split down the center, exposing both Naruto and Tsunami. Causing the mont's blood to run cold in his veins. Nah Naruto, you really didn't think your actions would go unnoticed, did you Gato? The blonde questioned as he calmly strode through the divide created for him, Tsunami at his side. An ice-cold look in his blue eyes. That you could just come in, and seize control from one of my most trusted associates, and run this place into the ground. Who is this punk? And why is the bitch with him? Inari looked to Gato for an answer, only to see the man he had come to imitate frozen with fear. Making him truly wonder who this blonde arrival was, that had Gato absolutely terrified. You could have easily allowed Tezuna to finish his bridge, hell you could have even sponsored it and taken it over after it was completed to create a monopoly on all the shipping and exports within Nami no Kuni. Naruto rattled off, keeping his eyes locked on the pudgy man. But no, you had to bring attention onto us with your ham-fisted tactics. I can explain, Naruto. Gato grumbled, dropping to his knees as the blonde and the woman ascended onto the platform. Wordlessly, Naruto raised his left hand, and with a quick snap of his fingers, the sea of thugs that were gathered in the center of the building were ripped apart as chains erupted from the walls, via the strange symbols from the seal Naruto had placed earlier. Ripping all to shreds, the chains made contact with, painting the floor red with their blood. Skillfully avoiding the workers and women being held against their will. Inari stared in shock, as his face adopted a horrified expression at the massacre the blonde man had just committed with a simple snap of his fingers. His eyes, slowly drifting up to the woman who had taken him in not even 2 years prior. Mo mother. He stammered before he felt his voice die in his throat as a wave of coldness washed over his body from the neck down. His chest becoming soaked in blood. His blood. Finding himself unable to scream, only to have a gurgling noise leak out, he brought his hands to his throat and found it covered in blood from the slash across his jugular. Dropping to his knees, he looked up one last time at the brunette, whom was now holding a bloodied karambit. Gato. Naruto spoke, catching the mont's attention one final time. You're fired. The man could barely register the words before he suddenly found himself staring at his own headless body, as his head rolled onto the floor. A few seconds later, the body fell over, and what little life was present, disappeared from his eyes. Wordlessly Naruto summoned forth a dozen of shadow clones and dispatched half of them to find clothing, blankets, or even towels to cover the exposed females, while the other half moved to free all of the people Gato had there against their will. While the shadow clones worked to free and comfort the captives, the original leaned down and picked up the decapitated head of Gato, storing it in a storage seal. Now, suppose I should inform Zabuza-san and his accomplice that there has been a change in management, don't you think, Tsunami-chan? Turning, his lips were immediately captured by a rather lustful brunette, whom had gotten turned on by the sheer brutality he had unleashed about Gato and his crew, as well as slacking her own bloodlust with the life-blood of her traitorous adopted son. Later, she musically breathed, pushing him towards what he could assume to be an office door, to give them some much-needed privacy away from prying eyes. I want you, now. Well, who am I to deny you? He grinned, kissing her back hungrily as the two disappeared into the room, shutting and locking the door behind them.